All right. It is noon, and let's get started. First of all, I'll introduce myself. I'm Mark Moykins, and I'm an iOS developer. I've been developing for over 20 years, not in iOS, but in other technologies. And in this series, this is all about shapes in SwiftUI to be specific. And the last episode we did, we created a trapezium object, which is like a rectangle with a angled bottom. And today we're going to do a curved sided rectangle. I couldn't find an official name for this shape, but I'm going to show you what it looks like here. Okay, here's some examples of the curve-sided rectangle. That's what I'm going to call it. And you notice at the top, it's a rectangle that you can use as a header, and only one side of it is curved. And that's what we're going to build. We're going to build a shape like this where one side of it's curved, and then you can use it as a header, or you can also use it as a footer as well. So it's pretty simple. Now let's talk about how we're going to do this. Actually, before I show you this slide, let's go into our project and let's actually start to build the shape. Hey, David from Australia. Stefania, good to have you with us again. And Pitmanra, or Ronnie. No, that's Ronnie. Okay, never mind. I already said welcome to Ronnie. Okay, so let's talk about starting a shape. Now, you can, using the path view, you can create a path directly inside your SwiftUI file. But I don't like to do this because when you do it that way, you have to explicitly tell it how big you want it, how wide you want it, and then, all that code for drawing the shape and all the lines is right there in your view. Instead, what I like to do is I like to take it and create a separate component, create a separate shape object. And there's some advantages to using a shape, such as you can give it a fill, you can outline it, give it a stroke, you can apply other modifiers to it, and shapes are push-out views. So all you have to do is put your shape on your screen, and it's going to push out and take up as much space as it can. And then you limit the size with a frame modifier. You tell it how big you want it to be, how tall, how wide. So that's why I like shapes. And that's what we're going to do. So what I did is I just created a regular SwiftUI file here, and I called it my curved side rectangle. Okay. And then I'm just going to change this. I'm going to change view to a shape. And let's delete this body here. We don't need that anymore. Now, if you don't know the next step to take, Xcode is going to tell you. It's going to say, oh, your curved-sided rectangle here doesn't conform to the shape protocol. So all you have to do is just fix, and it's going to give you one function that you have to implement. Sorry, Stuart. I plan on doing 2 live streams a week for maybe a couple of months. Okay, and I'm going to try to keep this short. I always say 30 minutes, but I always seem to go over. So let's see, what time is it now? It's only 3 minutes in. Okay, we're good. Okay, now notice, I want you to look at this path function here that you have to implement. This path is going to define your shape. What you return here, this path right here that you return, defines your shape. And you're given, as a parameter coming in, you're giving a rect, which is a CG rect, core graphics rectangle. Core graphics is just another part of the framework for iOS. This rectangle, that is actually going to tell you what the size that you're going to draw your shape in. So it's all relative. We don't want to give our shape 100 height, 200 width, something like that. We want to make it relative to fit inside the rectangle that we're given, because we don't know how we're going to use this, and we don't know what the device size is that our shape is going to live on. So we're going to use that rectangle. Now, let's talk about this rectangle. Let me show you this slide here. I call this the canvas. This is the canvas that you have to work with. So here's the rectangle that we have. This is the parameter that's passed in. And you can refer to its size or its points in a relative manner using the CGREX properties. And there's properties for the x-axis, which goes right to left or horizontal. And there's properties for the y-axis, which goes up and down or vertical. So let's talk about the x-axis first. Starting in the upper left-hand corner, you're going to have what's called min x, and that's pretty much equal to 0. And then from there, going to the right, going over to max x in the upper right-hand corner there, that is, we don't know what that value is, right? Because our shape, when we get that rectangle, it could be 100 wide, could be 1,000 wide, 500. We don't know. So we're just going to refer to it as the max x. And if we need a point in the middle, we can say mid x, middle x. So there you go, minimum, middle, and maximum. And it works the same way with on the y-axis. In the upper left-hand corner, you have min y, which is 0. It'll always be 0, because that's where 0 starts. And then the numbers increase as you go down. But again, we don't know what the max y is all the way down in the corner there. We don't know what it is. It could be 200, 300. So we're just going to refer to that point as max y. And that's a property on the CG rec. So we don't have to do anything to create that. All the other points are just combinations of min y, the min, mid, or max x and y coordinates. So that's our canvas that we're going to work with. Now, before we start talking about, before we start creating this object here, let's look at the next slide. This is our plan. This is the plan for our paths that we're going to draw. We have our canvas there, you know, those dotted lines. That's our canvas we're going to be working within. And the first thing we do with a path is we move it to a point. We say, this is the starting point. And that's number 1 right there. So the starting point, that is min x and min y. And then we're going to move it all the way over to the side where number 2 is, using an add line modifier. That's step number 2. Step 3 is we're going to draw a line going down. And again, that point right there where number 3 is, that is max x and max y, that corner right there. And then from there, we're going to use a special function. And these are all functions off the path. Path.move, path.addLine, path.oddLine. And then number 4 is path.addQuadCurve. The thing I like about quad curve, when you draw a curve, you only need to define 2 points. The first point is its destination, which is, if you look down in that lower left-hand corner there, do you know what the x and y is there? Yeah, that's min x, because it's at 0. And then it's all the way down. So that's max y. So we're going to draw a point from max x, max y, which is number 3, over to min x and min x, max y. Yeah, if you look here, that's max y, and then min x. Okay, so quad curve. So you define its destination point where you want it to end, and then you just define one more point, and that is the point, it's called a control point. And that's the point where the curve sort of like bends toward or goes toward. That curve doesn't actually reach that point. And then the last thing we do is we close subpath. So we could draw a line from point 4 to point 1. We could say path.addLine, but you don't need to. You can just say path.close subpath, and it's going to take the point that you're on and go back to the beginning. So it makes it really handy for us that way. So let's talk about this quad curve a little bit. When you set that control point, wherever you move that control point, your curve is going to bend toward it. It's not going to reach it. There's a lot of math here involved in creating a Bezier curve, or using this point right here. So we can put a point going down and create a curve going down like that. But it's hard to tell just where that curve is going to end up. So that's the only thing with the add quad curve. But it makes it super easy because you're only controlling one thing. Okay. So let's start building this. Is this an online class? Kid Kyle is asking. No, it isn't. But what I'm doing is I'm taking these videos and the projects and the slides, and I'm putting them on my website. So you can sign up there, and then you can go down through the steps. I'll probably have like maybe like 10 videos in the end. And then if you sign up now, you'll get in for free. It's free. But then I will probably make it into a course, and from there it'll be a paid course. And then I'll add like another 10 more shapes and videos and ways to enhance your UI using shapes. So if you guys want to get in for free now, now would be the good time to do it, because you'll be what's called grandfathered in. You'll be in the course already when you get in for free, and I can't charge you from there. Okay. Let's start building our shape here. So remember, the first thing we want to do is we want to move it. We want to move it to the start point, right? So let's do that. Whoops. Oh, I got the wrong thing highlighted here. Okay. Well, first of all, we need to create a path, right? So let's create our path here. Let's call it path, and it'll equal a brand new path. And then I have to return that path at the end after I'm done adding lines and things like that. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is move. Where do we want it to go? Now, I mentioned we want it to start at min x, min y, but there's a little shortcut with CG, with a CG point. This is a point. Point just has x, y coordinate. When what I can do is I can say CG point dot 0, and that, oh, you saw it right there. Okay, let's click on that again. The point with location 0, 0. So that's like a little shortcut. That's the same as min x, min y. Okay, now the next thing we want to do is we want to move over to the other corner, right? And let's do that. Okay, we're going to do the add line, which is right here. And again, it's just points. So we create a point, and point just has x and y. Excuse me. So the x, that is going to be max x. So the way we do that is we say rect, which is our parameter that's being passed in, and we want to say max x. And you see the comment down there, returns the largest value of the x coordinate for the rectangle. Super easy. Now for y, you can say rect dot min y, or you could just say 0. Because it's not going down, it's not going up, it's staying right on that top line. Up to you guys. Okay, we have our first line drawn. Now we want to draw going down to the max x, max y coordinate. So let's do that. Another CG point. It's going to be xy. And we're going to say rect dot max x. And then rect dot max y. Just like that. Now at this point, I think we have enough of this shape where we can resume, and it's going to show us like a little preview of what we have so far. Yeah. So remember, shapes are push out views. They're going to take up as much space as they can. So that's why you see this shape right here. It's filling up the whole screen. And by default, shapes are filled with a black color, which is the primary color. Primary is different from black. Primary just means it's black in light mode and white in dark mode. So for example, if I say preferred color scheme dark, you're going to see those colors switch around. Okay. Now, the next thing we want to do is we want to add a curve to the bottom there, right? And in order for us to preview it, let's make this curved-sided rectangle here down in the preview here. Let's make it a little bit more, let's make it not as tall so it doesn't fill up the whole screen. All right, let's say frame, and we'll just say height of 300. There we go. Okay, so our next path operation here is we want to add a quad curve right there. So remember, you start with a regular point, and this is the destination. We're going to go to, and for the x, do you guys remember where that is? Where it's going to? Max x. Yeah, it's all the way down the bottom. And for y, oh no, actually I made a mistake there. X is actually going to be 0, or min x. So that's all the way on the left. And for y, well, that will be max y, because it's all the way down at the bottom. Max y. We gotta review this again. Gotta refresh my memory. See how short my memory is? So, yeah, we just went from max x, max y down there in the lower right corner, and we're going to min x, max y in the lower left corner. All right, good. Now, the second one is the control point, and let's look at that again. So the control point, that's that blue dot down at the bottom, and that is going to determine how curved your line is going to be. So the further down it is, the more curved it will be. You can also have it go up, and it'll create a curved line going in the opposite direction as well. Okay, so let's pick a point here. And it's just XY coordinate again. And again, I'd advise sticking with, the min, mid, and max. So for X, that's going to be the midpoint, okay? So let's see here, like this. Let me just show you a visual. So that blue dot at the bottom again, where the control point is, that is your mid X. And for how far it goes down, what we can do is we're going to take max Y, which is the height, and then we're going to add a value to max Y to push it down even further. So this is rect dot midpoint, the mid X. And for Y, we're going to start. Let me make some room here. We're going to start with the max Y. And then we're going to say, like, let's add 100 to it. There we go. And there's our shape. Now, it's good practice. Kind of close your shapes up. This shape does look good the way it is. But we're going to create that last side there on the left. And the way we're going to do that is just by closing the subpath. So say close subpath. There we go. You won't see any visual difference. So there's your shape right there. Now, let's try to use it. Let's implement it, see what we can do with it. I'm going to create a new SwiftUI file. And we'll say demonstration 1. Okay, now what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a VStack. And then I'm going to add my shape to the VStack. Let's resume this. Probably won't resume because I need something in the VStack. So let's just add our curved side rectangle here. I probably could have called it CurveSided rectangle too. Okay, now if you do that, it's going to fill up the whole screen because shapes again they're push out views. So we're going to have to limit the size of this. We'll add a frame. So now another thing that you can do is you can hold down Control Option and click on your view to quickly access some modifiers. Now these are some default modifiers that you're given. If you want to add more modifiers, you'd have to click on that drop down below. But we just want to access the height here, and we're going to give it a height of 200. Okay, and then we want to push that up to the top. So let's add a spacer. There we go. And we probably want the shape to move into the status bar area. That's considered the safe area. We want to ignore that edge for the safe area. You do that with another modifier. Ignore safe area. Edge is ignoring safe area, and you say which side you want to ignore, and you say top. Whoops. There we go. Okay, now it's being pushed up. That doesn't look very impressive, right? Black shape. We're going to give it some color. Hey, Sanjay. Glad to have you with us. Oh, you're from Hyderabad. I went there. I went there for a wedding about 7 years ago. Manish, welcome. Okay, so let's give it some color. Shapes, when you give shapes color, you can use foreground or fill. I like to stick with fill. I like to reserve the foreground color for text. So let's say foreground color, and I don't know, let's say blue. Okay, now, actually, you know what? I did import a color scheme here. So we can actually start using these colors and kind of dress it up a little bit, make it look more real, more practical. And let me just give you a little tour here of these colors. So I define colors for the different elements. I name my colors after what I use them for. Accent color, that's for buttons, controls, things that a user can interact with. Background color, pretty obvious, use it as a background. And foreground color, that's text. And then secondary and tertiary colors, those are extra colors that basically aren't the other three colors. They're optional. You can use them to accent or give more color to your UI, enhance your UI a little bit. Now to access those colors, I have another file here, which is like an extension from color. So I can start typing in color.theme, and it gives me my 5 colors. Let's see this in action here, though. Let me move this file up. Okay, let's start with a background color. We're going to wrap our VStack in some other view. Doesn't matter if it's a VStack or HStack, because I'm going to change it to a Z stack, a depth stack, or a Z stack for those people that are from Europe. And then we want our background color, right? So I just say color.theme, And those are all my named colors right there. I want the background. And then that will also have to ignore the safe areas. So let's see here. Edges, ignoring safe area, all. All right. Now for our color here, let's use one of our themes. Oh, I use foreground color, and I meant to say fill. I just said I didn't like using a foreground color for that. So you guys are probably wondering, like, well, then why did you use it? Okay, for theme, let's try like a secondary or a tertiary here. We'll go with our secondary color. There you go. Hey, Ivan from Texas. Deep South Texas. Nice. We have Paul from Toronto. That's cool. I've been to Toronto, too. I really love that city. I was surprised when I first went to Toronto just how big it is. I didn't realize it was such a huge, huge city. All right. And we have all my kinds in here, too, joining us. Thank you for joining. Oh, that's Manish from India. Sorry, I should read up. What? They call it a Zen stack? Is that really, Stuart? I didn't know that. That's the first time I ever heard that term. Okay, now you notice this this top shape here. It's kind of big, right? Let's make it a little bit smaller. And let's add a shadow to really separate it and bring it out. So let's say shadow. And we'll give it an 8. That looks good. So notice how it starts to stand out more. And then with this header, this is kind of like a header to your UI, right? So you probably want to add some text on top of it or add something on top of it. Maybe like a button or something over on the right-hand side for settings or options or something like that. So let's add an overlay to this shape. And remember, you can do this 2 ways. You can either add an overlay to the shape or create a V stack or an H stack and add a background using our shape. Yeah, so let's add an overlay here. And I'm going to say it's going to be a text. Like this. And I'm going to say concert. It's the reason why I'm using this. Okay, so we have our text. I'm going to put that on a different line because I'm going to add some modifiers to it. I'm going to hold down Control Option, click on text. It's going to give me some quick access to some properties here. I'll make it large, and I'll make it thicker. Let's make it black. Yeah, it's pretty big. And I think I'm going to make it bigger. So I'm going to I'll leave it like this. I'll leave it using large title. Okay, so that's good. And then, you had the rest of your content going down your VStack, after your spacer here. Okay, now you can also use shapes to clip things. Oh, Z-stack. Okay, I got you, Stuart. Okay, it makes more sense. Juliana, welcome. Let's see, what time is it there? It's probably a boa tarde, right? Giuliano, he's from Brazil, and he's actually from the city where I met my wife. Well, I don't know if he's from there, but he was living there at a time when when I met my wife down in Vitória, Brazil. And one time we went down there on vacation, and I got horribly sick. I was in the hospital, and Giuliano offered, any assistance that he could provide. And I was super grateful for that. So thank you again for that, Giuliano. We also have Anderson. He's from Brazil too. Boa tarde. Boa tarde just means good afternoon. Boa, good, tarde, afternoon. Okay. Could have used a rectangle with a circle and overlap them. Yeah, you can do that. And I've done that before. I've used a rectangle with an ellipse. The problem I had with that is when you give a height to it, I'm talking to Rabin here. When I gave a height to it, that ellipse would stretch out, and so the curve would change. If you do it this way, the curve remains the same, no matter how tall you make it. But what we have here is there's actually a problem with this shape right here. So let me show you what that is, and then let's see if we can fix it. All right. So it looks good right now, and the only way to really see this problem is when I click on the curved rectangle. Actually, no, let me show you the problem first. Let's create another file here. And this will be our mask demonstration. Okay. Let's keep these together here. So let's start with what we have here. Let's just grab that body, bring it over, and replace it here. Now, there's another situation where you can use shapes to clip an image or mask an image. And basically what that means, you may have seen this in WWDC last year. They had a square image, and what they did is they put a circle on top of it, and it cut out every part of the image that went outside the circle. That's called masking. You put a shape on top of an image, and it gets rid of everything that goes outside the shape. You don't see the shape either. So the shape goes away too, but the image stays. So that's what we're going to do. Let's delete this. And we can delete that too. Don't need that. Let's start with our image. I have an image here that I got from Pexels, and the photographer is Vishnu R. Nair. So he took this awesome picture of a concert. I liked it. So let's copy that image name. And let's use that in here. See what it looks like. It's going to be big, right? Images, they have their own size, and you can't do anything about them until you add some modifiers to it. So we're going to add resizable. Now it pushes out. Aspect ratio is wrong, so we got to fix the aspect ratio now. Aspect, if I can spell it. Okay, we're going to use fill. We're actually going to use fill here. And it kind of looks like it's back to normal, but now when I add a frame, it will be resized. So let's see, for the height. For the height, no, I do want, let's sit, yeah, height. Height 200, let's see how that looks. Yeah, that's fine. Now what we want to do is we want to take that shape and we want to give it a curved bottom, okay? So there's this property here, or modifier called clip shape, and we just supply it with a shape. So for example, let me just show you something. If I use circle, then now our image is a circle. Well, we want to do the same thing with our shape. So we'll say curved side rectangle. And what happened? Where's our curved bottom? I don't know. Oh, we also have Abe from Tehran. Welcome, Abe. Glad you could join us. So what happened here? Let's go back to this other view, and maybe we can figure this out. When I click on curved sided rectangle here, curved side rectangle, notice that blue rectangle. We told that frame, that shape, to only be 100 high, and it is 100 high, but the shape is extending outside of that rectangle. And if I clip that shape, like if clip will basically cut off anything that goes outside of the frame. So look at this. If I add the clipped modifier, it cuts everything off except for what's inside the frame. How can we fix that? This is a problem that I had when I first started creating this shape. This is a while ago. This shape is actually in my book, SwiftUI Views Mastery. And admittedly, I haven't updated it with my new method. But what I want is I want the shape to reside inside the rectangle. And that might be the hardest thing when you start creating shapes, to try to keep the shape inside the rectangle. So let's go back to our shape. We're going to fix this. And here's the best way I found out how to do this, because when your curve is created, you don't know how far outside the rectangle it's going to go. Because remember, it has a control point, right? Let me show you this. It has this control point way down here at the bottom. And you don't know how far down. You know where where that control point is going to be, but you don't know how far the curve will extend toward it. You can figure it out, but you know that it's a mystery at first. So what I found is we're using 100. We're having it go down 100 right here. What you can do is you can offset these points here. So this is what we're going to do. Take a look at this slide here. That control point at the bottom, if it goes down 100, then those 2 control points in the lower corners there, the bottom corners, we're going to push them up 100. And I find if I do that, if I use the same amount that I'm going down, and I push those control points in the corners going up, the curve always stays within the rectangle. So that is going to be our solution. So let's find our corners here. And I'm just going to add a comment here so we can quickly figure out where it is. I'll say bottom trailing. And then the quad point here, the quad curve, is going to the bottom leading. So those are the 2 that we need to adjust. And we're adjusting it just on the y-axis here. So if we're going plus 100, then we need to say minus 100. And same with here. We need to go minus 100 on that y point. Now that looks, the curve is more accentuated because the points, the starting and ending points of that quad curve are higher up. So you want to adjust these so it looks good, right? Like if we go back to one of our screens, that looks kind of stupid, right? I mean, it might be what you want or what the client wants, but it looks a little silly. So what if we can make that adjustable? What if we can add a parameter that we can pass in to adjust the curve? So you notice now, but it is working though. You see the blue rectangle, and the curve is staying right inside the frame. It's hitting that very bottom edge there. And same with here. This is a smaller height, but again, the curve stays right inside the frame. It's exactly what we want. So let's add a parameter to make this adjustable. Okay. And I'm going to call it the y offset. So, because y goes up and down, right? So I'll just say var y offset. If you want, you can call it a offset. Don't call it that. Okay, and this will be a CG point. No, this will be a CG float. And by default, let's give our shape a default curve to it. We'll say 50. And then we're going to use our offset. Just kidding. Our y offset here. Let's resume that, see how that looks. Yeah, you're right. I'll show you how you can animate that too. So that was Ronnie Pittman. He said it might be fun to animate that control point. So I'll show you guys how to do that. Okay, that curve, that looks a little bit better, right? It's basically the same curve that we had before. Okay, but now let's take a look at this. Now we can adjust this. So maybe our header got a little bit bigger, and we want a deeper curve, a bigger curve. So let's go into our curved rectangle, and now there's an optional parameter in there, y offset. And instead of 50, it's 50 right now. So we can make it 70. The curve got bigger, but notice it's still inside the frame. And the height is still 200. So that's super handy. Maybe we don't want as much of a curve. Let's go back to 100. That curve almost goes all the way to the top. And let's adjust that. We're going to, let's try 30. Yeah, that could be good. Just a slight curve. Maybe not enough to draw attention, but enough to add an interesting element to your UI. And let's go back to our image here. And that's looking good again. So if you use that, maybe you want to make it less, make it more. You have that option now. We can add our y offset, and instead of 50, we could say 40, make it a little bit less. We can add a shadow to it, give it a little bit of depth. And let's see, let's go with something higher. We go with 12, and get a little bit of if you want to create more depth. I did a live series yesterday on shadow and how to use shadow to give things depth and direction of a light source direction. You guys can check that out if you're interested. You can really do cool things with your UI with shadow. So here, we're going to move that shadow down a little bit. Let's move it down 10, see what that looks like. There we go. There's more depth. It's coming off the screen more. Okay, now let's see. Ronnie talked about animating it. So animation, it's tricky because you have to, uh, you can't animate your custom shape unless you say what it is you want to be animated. So hold on a second. Let me look something up here. I'm going to refer to my notes. I did this last week, by the way, with our shape. We created that trapezium shape. Okay, let's go to our shape here. Now, this is probably what we want to animate, right? That Y offset. So in order to animate it, we have to say what it is we want animated. And for that, we just have to create a property with a very specific name. And that is animatable data. There we go, animatable data. And what type is it that we're going to be animating? Well, it's going to be this CG float right here. Okay, then we have to provide a getter and a setter because it has to know when it accesses that property, animatable data, it has to know, well, what is it I'm going to be animating? So we want to animate the Y offset here. So let's create a getter for that to return our Y offset. And we need a setter. And oops, there we go. And it's going to be Y offset equals new value. New value is a keyword that specifies the value that you're setting your property to. Okay. Oh, maybe if I started off with a curly brace here on the getter. Okay. That looks right. Now we can animate it. Let me just resume it, make sure everything's okay. Yeah. So now what you can do, you have your offset here. So maybe you have some kind of like value that you want to adjust, or some kind of, you want some kind of like indicator that says there's going to be a change. You have to make some kind of data change in order for an animation to occur. So what we can do is we'll create a state variable. Private var. It's going to be Boolean, and we'll just say change. Change equals false. And then what you do is for this offset, you want to give it a different value. So maybe you start at 0, and then when the change occurs, it goes to 20. So let's see here. You would say you look at your change variable. If the change is true, go to 20. If the change is false, go to 0. That's a ternary operator. It's a way to do it if else in one line using a question mark and a colon. This is your condition, this is your true part, and this is your false part. Oh, we had it at 20, didn't we? All right, yeah, let's make it more noticeable. So how do you kick off that change? Well, you could do on appear. So when this screen first comes up, but let's use a button. So that way I don't have to run it. I don't have to, get the simulator to come up. All right, we'll just add a button here. Hey, look, there's my button right there. And it's got everything programmed for us. That's actually a code snippet that I had in there. Okay, so we have our change button here. It changes our property. Pretty handy. So you notice our shape is flat bottom now, right? That's because it's using 0 for the offset. And let me add another spacer, get that button up here. Okay. Now there's no animation, so let me just show you kind of like a before and after here. Wait for this preview to finish. And let me check the time. Okay, we're a little bit over, so I'm going to be ending soon. Okay, so if I click change, you notice it changes, right? And but there's no animation to it. That's because we have to supply an animation modifier. We have to use animate. We have to supply animation, what kind of animation we want it to use when that change occurs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use what's called an explicit animation, and that is with animation. The reason why it's called explicit is because you're saying that anything that uses this variable right here, only that's going to change. So you can imagine that you could use a wide array of different variables that trigger changes, like change 1, change 2, change 3, but you're only going to be animating the modifiers that use change 1 or this change state variable. Okay, so let's try it now. Click change. There you go. I don't know if you can see it, but it's animating. Looks like it's smiling. All right, well, that's it for this this episode, creating a curved bottom rectangle. Now, you can talk about different options. Let's talk about different options for expansion that you might want to use or customize this for. We're only adding a quad curve to the bottom, but you could add a quad curve to the top line. Then that way you can use the shape on the bottom and give it a curve going the other way. You can also, we didn't talk about this, but there's another option too. So what if instead you want to make it a negative amount? What's going to happen if you make it a negative amount? Then you can also go the other direction, and you can use that, to create this, a different UI effect, right? But then you can also use another shape at the bottom that goes the other way. So it looks like your content in the middle is within sort of like a circle or a capsule, okay? So you can go negative on this. And if you look at this, let's turn it off here. This will have to take some adjustment because you notice it goes outside the rectangle, right? When you go negative. So that's another place that we have room for improvement. So you can add a quad curve. Let me go back to my shape here. Yeah, that's it. So you can add a quad curve to the bottom, but you can also add a quad curve to the top, and you can default it to 0, so it looks just like this. If you give your control point, the X and Y, if you leave it at 0, it'll just, mid X, and then the Y is 0. It'll just be a straight line. And then you can create another variable to adjust the Y offset for the top, and then maybe another variable that says you want to curve just the top or just the bottom. It's up to you. There's a lot of different options that you can do here. I think that's it. Thank you guys for joining me. I had a great time talking to everyone and meeting everyone. We also have Luca from Florence, Italy. Florence is another place I went to, and Italy is one of my favorite countries. If you haven't been to Italy, try to do so after this pandemic because it's one of my favorite places. I've been there 4 times. I've been to Florence, I think 3 times. That's how much I loved it. Okay, thanks so much, guys. And I'm logging out. I wish you a great rest of your day or night.